Johnny, thank you for joining me.
Pleasure.
I've been looking forward to this.
Nice.
Took a while, didn't it? We're busy people and moving stuff, but this is the moment.
Yeah.
Tell me, who is Johnny Wilkinson?
Crikey. I've got no idea.
Still finding out.
I could have told you 20 years ago, I'd have had a good answer for that. I was quite, and 20 years and plus, very value driven. Sort of built myself out of all these lines and, this is acceptable, this is not, this is good, bad, this is what I've done, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what's worthy, and all these kind of things. And to a degree, I think at the time it worked as part of a channeled the energy in a way. But the more that I bought into it, the more that those lines kind of closed me into a box. And then I was kind of like, I'm going through a period of healing, I think, which has meant breaking those lines down and expanding and all the kind of breathing, liberating and all that kind of stuff. And what that means with regard to identity is those lines used to be my identity. This is the box, here's the name of it.
What made you want to break out of that box? Was there a defining moment or a kind of almost a crash where you just thought, I need to blow the doors off this?
It was the throughout my career as a sportsman, there was a kind of journey there of understanding. Initially there was all this energy and it needed to be guided and channeled. Otherwise it was just a bit like, whoa, so I needed to understand, even looking at it from a rugby perspective, how do you play the game? How does it work? How do you play to your team's strengths? What's the best way to do this and that, all those kind of things. But as a person as well, I needed to find some structure. The problem was that structure inevitably is kind of like, it might seem like some lines you draw in the sand, but they're always turned in. And as you go, you get to this point, and that point feels like it's going to be this moment of, I've made it, the summit. It's that kind of, look at me now, happy ending, credits rolling on the film, I've done it. But as you get closer, it starts to hurt because you're just getting trapped. And so what I tried to do for a while was I went through this process of like, I'm going to try and get some of that space back that I had when I was young. It's what people talk about. I used to play just as a kid in the park. So when people play free. So as you get closer to that point, the more successful you get, the more you want I just want to be a kid in the park again. But you also want that thing. The key for me was to realize that even the idea about trying to open up was another line pointing further in, because you're still trying something instead of just the allowing. And that's, in a way, that allowing doesn't take place, to carry on this kind of analogy, it doesn't take place until there's a bit of a death. And the death is where the lines cross over. But when they cross over, you begin this journey. And now you're going back to where you became, but you're doing it consciously. That death has been, in a way, given to me many times, whether it be through, and it was always like humiliation, it was always the death, because I always wanted to be a perfectionist. That was my way of dealing with the fear and the doom that I sensed as a kid. I sort of thought, right, I picked up some religious kind of tenets and thought, okay, right, this is the way to live a perfect life. You do this, and my passion was rugby, so I'm going to do it through rugby. I'm going to be perfect, going to save everyone around me, I'm going to be a martyr on the field, I'm going to be a warrior, I'm going to take on all these challenges. I'm going to create this CV that I can present at the pearly gates at the end and go, there you go, let me in. I'm going to be the one person to survive that ending. As I sort of, got going on that journey, I realized that you can't be perfect. Every time you step out, we're flawed. We're all flawed. The first game I play, I miss a kick. Well, I'm no longer perfect. And each one of these things was a mini humiliation. But I kept fighting it and recreating it as like, I know, but, and then the next game I'd be thinking about, I've got to be perfect. Like selective memory. Just like, oh, well, forget last week. I've got it. And that kind of helped to a degree. But it just kept at bay this allowing, whether it was losing 76-0 to Australia, whether it was what I was going through in my life off the field, whether it was injury, winning the World Cup and realizing I got to the point and there was nothing there. But instead of crossing over and going, I wasn't ready, so I came back and tried to go again for the next World Cup. Yeah, and inevitably injuries did it, end of career did it. God knows what else has happened. Off the field has done it. And at some point, I kept facing these crises moments. And then it got to a point where I just started to realize for once that I can't live my life this way. I've had too much learning and I'm not listening. And I'm in danger of turning what the first half of my life, understanding that there is no more to be had in that journey. The space I want is through this allowing, accepting, surrendering. I don't want that to be the story of my whole life. And since then it's been different.
Were you the kid that played freely? Because there's so much pressure coming from within there about wanting to be the best, the perfectionist, win at all costs. And you put your body on the line. You could just see the level of concentration going back to playing days, watching you, and dedication, if you like. But going back to a young lad playing, did you go through a transition of playing freely to then allowing, like as you described, the whole thing to start pointing to something? Do you remember playing freely?
I've always had those lines, as it were, from a young age. I can feel that. And those lines are essentially, for me, the pressure. It's like, you can't pressure anything unless it's formed. Like you try and pressure a ball with a hole in it. You pressure it, but the air escapes. You can't put it under pressure. But as soon as that ball closes and says, this is who I am, I know how the world works, suddenly it can be crushed. That's where I kept feeling it. This ideas, I had solid ideas, conclusions about how life had to be. I have to win. And because I have that conclusion, in order to be perfect, to be safe, to be good enough, to be worthy, I have to win. Because I have to win, there's my solid conclusion, that can be pressured. And having this understanding of my ability to respond to anything is like the hole in the ball. You can't pressure me now. I understand it within me, my gift, and that ability to respond to anything can be found in the open mindset of understanding about learning and growth. The growth mindset is a hole in the ball, as it were, but that can become another conclusion. It can become, it needs to be bigger than that. And the bigger than that was me about, what am I here for? Am I here to win, or am I here to explore who I am and what I'm capable of truly? And that's the bigger question. The whistle did that for me when I was younger. You have these lines and you'd be like, I'm after this, but then the whistle goes and you go, screw lines. I don't know what lines are. I'm just here. The problem is as you get, those lines get more and more pronounced and start turning in even closer, the whistle goes and you're still on the field. And what this represents, conclusions and what have you, it's intellectual living through the mind, being on the field and living through, trying to work it out. When you're trying to work out a game of sport, you're going to be behind 2 or 3 seconds behind the play of those that are feeling it and just sensing it and living it and experiencing it. So you're in the past and the future, they're in the now. You're not even behind the play, you're just off the play. And that, as a youngster, that's what you want back. You want that freedom. The problem is you have to do a little bit of work to find out your truth.
Yeah, your articulation then is phenomenal. It's coming with maturity and perspective to look back, to be able to remember the young lad, see where you created that. You created those lines.
Yeah.
Without external influences and pressure, but you actually created, and I think you can really recognize that now, because if you talk about what you've achieved, you won the World Cup, you kicked the goal that ultimately won the World Cup in Australia. And yet you'd set boundaries and the next level of pressure that meant you didn't seem to be happy with that. I'm picking up on a content Johnny now. And that was a key part of what I wanted to ascertain today is, are you happy?
There's an understanding in that that's quite key, which is there's nothing wrong with what I was doing because it was in service, but I suffered it. And what I'm recognizing now is where I had a beautiful quote, which was that if you find out what it is you want to do beyond all compulsions and just do that in life. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what am I compelled to do and what do I really want to do?
That's purpose.
And there's a real subtle difference between those two voices. The one that's coming from the old learned thing, which is like, you've got to do this and you should do this. And then there's this feeling of like, this is what I'm here to do. And that the subtle difference is but even when they get mixed up, there's still service taking place. I was suffering that rugby journey quite a lot. I was loving loads of it, but I was also suffering quite a lot of it. And during that World Cup in 2003 or 2007 or various points, I was all over the place. I wasn't even present. But people coming up and saying, oh my gosh, I was at that game. And just being able to see you with my son there or my daughter, whatever, and we watched that, and oh, that thing, And you're kind of like, you're making a difference by just doing your best. Doing your best, making a difference. And I think what I'm doing now is realizing I've still got that same energy. I sort of lifted off the rugby and realized that that energy that was being channeled through rugby is now expanded without rugby, and it feels stronger. It was not so much expanded, it was being filtered by rugby, refracted through the rugby belief system. And now that's gone, it's kind of coming through brighter, but it still wants something. I can't sit down and just I keep telling myself, I'll just do this. Once I get to 50, I'll then just live this. I'll go and just do the sport I love doing, all these different things. But it's like, I know as soon as I sit there, I start creating new things that cause me all kinds of trouble. And I'm like, but this is what I'm here to do to a degree. Well, my thing is to not suffer it and not create these hard lines of it has to be like this. And that curiosity mixed with the power of the drive and the purpose, those two create for that balance. But that's a push and a pull. I didn't understand how to pull, and most of performance, the next level of performance in people, I think, which is maybe where I find my role, is in bringing about an understanding from both camps, how to push and how to pull. Because often the pulling that we do, the coming home, the grounding, the relaxation, the self-love, the openness, the curiosity, the calm, all these kind of beautiful, nurturing energies, we still do through a push mentality. Got to get in that sauna. Got to relax. I'm trying to relax here. I'm trying to be in the moment. It's like there's the drive, conquering, go and achieve, and then there's it's not you don't do relaxation. You allow for it. It's already happening.
You make time for it.
You just devote yourself to letting it be. And these are the two, push and pull. There's the drive. This is what I want, and then there's this is allowing it to be what it is. Acceptance, which allows for the response. Accept, respond, versus resist, react.
I know one thing that aligns us, and we were talking about earlier, is curiosity. We both enjoy learning from people. I'm doing it right now. I'm listening to you, and it's, again, the articulation and the lived experience. It's powerful. That's been a key part, I feel, from you, of how you've almost gone about that stimulation and trying to make yourself happier from a time where you should have been ecstatic from certain things you've achieved, but it doesn't feel like you were. You moved on quickly. You used that analogy of the cross that went, you're looking for something else. It's so driven, you're so motivated, you've created that. And that's healthy if it's channeled in a sense. So how much of a lot of what you've done, including the I am pod and what you're thinking about doing now, is based on that curiosity, learning from others that then gives you that perspective, maturity to just piece together your own mindset?
I've always like lots of people. I'm inspired by people who seem to be able to respond to things and in ways that I don't think I can. It's inspiring. It's like, this is not possible. Oh, there's an example of it being possible. But what inspires me more and really interests me is people that have conscious awareness of how they're doing it. It's all very well sort of saying to, like a tennis player being like, geez, how do you hit the ball so hard? Or how do you do that? And they go, I don't know.
Yeah. Or I train for it.
Yeah, I just do this training. And you go to the coach and go, well, why are you making them do that? Oh, just because it's always worked. You're like, right, no, come on, I need something deeper. I need to understand this, the deeper engineering aspects of who we are. And I think for me, that's when I had a crisis moment period in my life around my sort of late 20s, about 26, 27, which I found out recently through an I Am podcast episode that can be quite a thing, that time of life. There's lots of changes going on in the body. And anyway, I had a big one, and I couldn't get out of it. I was having professional help, which I had loads of times during my life. And the one thing that hit, two things hit. One was that the guy giving the help was a sufferer himself. And that was a bit like as a rugby player, you're about to go out in the field. The bond is made not because you're all great rugby players, but because you face that vulnerability and you kind of go, there's nothing we can control about this game. We've done what we can. Now it's time to just go there together. And it's vulnerable. And I felt like being with someone who understood and had those stories gave me that sense of a bond, which really resonated with me. That helped. The second part was he just mentioned the Buddha. And I was talking about this whole issue I was going through in life. And he was like, yeah, this is kind of the stuff that someone like the Buddha was doing 2,500 years ago. I'm like, who the hell's the Buddha? And it wasn't about Buddhism necessarily. It was about the fact that it was inspiring. Someone took on a challenge, and this started to resonate with me. I was about going into the rugby field, taking on a challenge, the ultimate challenge. And I was like, this is peanuts compared to the real challenge. Which led me into that sort of spiritual world just a little bit. Started to be inspired by this kind of deeper journey. And then I realized, Christ, this is what I'm after in my performance. I'm after mastery in my rugby or in any sport I do. I look for mastery, that perfection. But it gets confused with, I get it in, people look at me and they like me and I'm worthy. And you move that to the side, you're like, I'm after mastery. What does that mean about, but it has to be self-mastery. And so I did self-mastery. I tried self-mastery. I tried to be good at self-mastery for a lot of the first part, which is just not it.
No.
You can't do that. And so then that led me into a journey of, like you said, through the Iron podcast, where I was just like, I want to speak to people who have these lived experiences.
Almost like therapy for you as well, right? I've related it in some context to that for me, where you're learning and you're piecing together. And when you had a light bulb moment in a pod clearly that related back to you being 26, and I've had all sorts of scenarios where you think, gosh, I was that person. Well, that makes sense to me now because of how they've shared information.
Yeah, and I think it's also coming back to, again, those two voices. There's always that one voice that's saying, oh, this would look. It's always how it looks or how it would feel to go and, if I go and hang out with those people, it'll be this, versus the other one, which is to, for me, another voice that's saying, sit and talk to someone. And there's just an intuitive yes about some of these, but there's more of a forceful yes about the other one, that image thing. And we have this with guys I work with when we're kicking balls. It's quite funny. I'll say, right, I want you to kick this ball and tell me how it feels. And we're looking for a great feel. And I try and say, I want you to score the feel, but basically just rate the feel of it. And they'll kick the ball and they'll look at the ball and then they'll tell me how they feel. They'll never be able to tell me how it feels without looking at the ball. So I'll say, don't look at the ball, just tell me how it feels. So they'll kick the ball and they'll go, it was a bit, and then they'll look up very quickly and then go, it was like this. I'm like, right, basically kick, shut your eyes, or turn away, and they kick it, turn away, and they turn towards me and they start looking at me to try and gauge my reaction of what the ball's doing. They still cannot just go to feel. And it's that, how are you going to discern between the two differences if you don't even know what a ball feels like on your foot? And it's a total
It's a different answer as well, right? If you're looking for validation, you're looking for a reaction.
Yeah.
Actually, you might have a whole different experience.
And that's self-discovery. First of all, what does your body feel like? Not what does it look like? What does it feel like? And it's all listening to other people, what they've said and what this has happened and what I've learned from here, instead of take ownership of that first space. And I think that being able to tune into that voice and then just when I'm in that space there, once I lose that kind of sense of, it's me controlling everything, it's become about, it's so much more about life coming through me. And now we're in that journey of finding out what I'm here for, what I'm capable of, like coming to a conversation. I enjoy these lots because of, like you said, learning from people and gathering new insights. But more importantly, I think I find out more about myself. In other words, I start saying things I didn't know I knew. And I'm listening to myself going, this is interesting. But I've spent so much of my life listening to myself going, I've heard this before. You do this all the time. As soon as this type of person comes, you fall into this energy state and you start talking about the stuff you did and how hard it was for you. And I'm like, geez, it's just patterns.
Yeah.
But then you drop out of patterns and suddenly something comes through you and you're going, where did that come from?
And that taps back into the curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned the word vulnerability there. And for someone that played a game of such physical power, if you like, you yourself, the hits you used to make, the commitment and, again, strength as a player, and the seemingly strong mindset, which, at the time, the relentless focus, the drive is exactly why you achieved so much. But as we sit here now, there's a crisis in young boys. It's sort of been put into a fiction program with adolescents on Netflix. Gareth Southgate did a talk with Dimbleby, sort of about the Lost Boys, if you like, and there's a report that sits behind that, the Centre of Social Justice did, that I've kind of consumed, and you think, gosh, there is a crisis of young lads not having a sense of identity, not having confidence, feeling pretty lost in the world, and role models. This is where I'm going with what I want to talk to you about. Role models that have come through social media that are nothing like, being honest, to sort of role models like yourself that I was watching and were all over the sort of press, if you like, for all the right reasons. I don't know where you sit with this, but it feels like we've lost our way with that vulnerability being a strength, which you're echoing in this conversation. You're putting it out there that it's all right to admit we don't quite have it all figured out. It's literally how you started the conversation with me, rather than someone that's saying, I've got it all together and this is how you do it, and it's totally the wrong message. Where do you sit with that? And I say that as dads talking before, because this affects our daughters, right? How these young lads are growing up, the respect, the way that boys treat girls now, it's changing from how we grew up.
In a very simplified way, I think what I've come to understand about what my career was about was the only thing I can do is I have my lane, and then I have the other lane, which is the universe. Everything else in the universe is coming through me, through you, through anything, but there's my lane, there's me. I've got to look after me. I've got to turn up and give everything a chance. If I want this to be a beautiful conversation, I've got to start to turn up and give that a chance. And now I'm starting to learn all the time where, hold on, when I turn up like this and I've got this part of me that wants to force, I'm too much into what it needs to be, I don't give it a chance. I'm starting to work all the time with, the problem is a lot of the messaging is, I think, well, not the problem, but certainly something that would have led me astray when I was younger a little bit, is the fact that you've got so much, it's all about taking control and winning and being the man and all this. And what you do is as we said, I was saying earlier, that same hole, when you create that, this is who I am, I'm the man, you can be pressured. And there's the other side of it a little bit is that you also, when you close that space, you disconnect from two things. One, from the universe, which is one thing, and everything in it. So you feel disconnected. When you become the man, I'm going to talk about men, not women, because that's my experience. When you become the man, it's a lonely place. I became the man in rugby, and it was lonely, and I treated people terribly. Not terribly as in like, but terribly to my own view in terms of how it could have been different, because I became the man. Because I thought, I've done it, I'm at the top, and I closed off and went, I'm this, I'm distinguishable now. You can distinguish me from everyone else because of this. And what it means is, yes, you can distinguish. Now we're separate. Now I can't connect. And I longed for that. It destroyed me to be the man. There's something so beautiful about, like I said, doing your bit, but staying open, as you said. And what does open mean? It means that this is who I want to be, but I'm open to who I'm meant to be. And that's that constant thing. And this whole drive to being like, you got to be who you want to be and be the man and this is what it means. It's kind of like, there's opportunities to always, from everything, take what feels good, discard what doesn't, but you've got to bring you. If you don't bring you, that's the part, and you is way more important. And I think that turning up, just give everything a chance. So this is beautiful preparation for a kick. You think, right, I want to get this kick over. I use a sport analogy because it's always worked for me, but you've got this kick and it's from a long way and it's out wide and it's a tight angle and all these kind of things. And you go, right, what do I do? Well, you give it a chance. But you're like, no, I need to get it. All right, well, go for it then. You make sure you get it. And it's like, well, I need to do it. And as soon as you cross that line, you start going, but it's so big, it's overwhelming. It's like, yeah, that's pressure just because you closed off. That whole power of just saying, give it your best shot. So cliche, but as long as you know, here's the boundary, I look after me, I turn up, and the rest is open. I have this with a player came to me and was kicking a ball and was talking about, oh, I'm missing here and I'm missing there and it's all over the place and I'm worried about this on the weekend. I'm just like, right, this to someone might be like, okay, it's a technical thing, or you need to do this. It's like, well, let's explore first. have you just stepped over that line? Have you closed off? And another way of looking at that is you're in a different energy state. So you kind of go, right, let's have a little walk around the field before we start. And when we're walking around, I'm sort of saying, right, let's just really loosen your shoulders, a little bit of a skip, trying a few little jokes with the ball, spinning around.
Nothing to do with kicking the ball, right?
Nothing to do with kicking, just that. And then you come back in and say, all right, now we're just chatting about something else, whatever. And he puts the ball on the tee, looks at me and goes, did you see that comedy show last night on TV? And I'm like, oh, here we go. Putting the ball down, looking where he wants it to go, totally focused, whilst talking to me about comedy. I'm like, this is an interesting balance. Fully present, but not overstepping that line. Just crushes it down the middle. Next kick, right, I need to do that again. It's like, no. Now you've crossed the line. You've just pretended that you did that. You didn't. You turned up, you did your bit. The other bit was also done. It's a collaboration. As soon as you try and take the universe's role, it hurts. We call that pressure.
That's a proper mindset.
And that's what I mean about the with parenting, is that I haven't got a clue who my daughter's supposed to be. I know what I want her, the life I want her to have, and I can do my bit, but not more. And finding that line is a constant challenge. But the way I think I understand it is by constantly looking at me in every other part of my life. How can I turn up for this conversation? I'm waiting out there to do this conversation. I feel my energy comes up a little bit, and I can see I start moving a bit quick, and my breathing's not quite right. I'm like, now, if I have the tools and techniques to stop and go, let me bring myself down, engineer myself into being how I need to be to give this a chance, not to make it how it needs to be, social media, this is how you need to look, this is what right is, wrong is, but just how do I give this a chance for it to be all it can be? And then I do that work. Now, through that work comes all my revelations about life. I don't get any revelations from controlling anything. What revelations do I get other than just do it again? Boredom, anxiety, overwhelm, pressure, they're symptoms of stepping over that line. But you want a life of surprise, of magic, then you've got to understand the collaboration. You see a magic trick on TV and it always blows me away. It's like fascinating. I'm like, oh my gosh. And suddenly my world turns into pure possibility. It's like, what the hell? And then you read in a book how they do it. And you go, and you see it again next time, you go, Now, every moment in life for me is either magic or mundane, depending on whether you think you know how it's done. And that's it. So my whole life is, as soon as I overstep that line, I think I know how everything's done.
It's fascinating.
So I bring myself into the unknown. I think I know how my daughter should be.
Yeah.
I think I know how this game that she's playing should turn out. What's good, what's bad, what's acceptable, what's not, what I can respond to, what I won't be able to. And you're just like, that's going to hurt me. So do that bit. And I don't know how to help. I'm not a specialist. I don't know how to help kids do these things. But I'm like, well, I've got to do my bit first. And out of that will come the revelations I need. And just like the whistle in a rugby game, I've never been left short. Life has never left me without what I need to handle my moment. But it's up to me to be open enough to receive what life is offering me.
That's powerful. Just listening to you then about parenting and trying not to be like a helicopter parent, and you coming from a position of incredible leadership where people would listen to you and effectively leading by example to then have people follow. You know how you're a dad, and you've got this whole scenario where you already have that mindset, but it's not for you to kind of expect your daughter to do what you're saying, but then to find their way, and you're just there to actually kind of just chaperone in any way, keep within a certain amount of line. Because I've got that whole like trying to fix ranter, and I had a bit of a light bulb moment in a different conversation, but in here, where someone actually said that to a parent who'd gone to the and key undertow to this is this sort of whole conversation is mental health. The voices in your head, the self-imposed rails we put in. When we got a chance to talk at the 2003 Champions celebration dinner, the whole team were there, and the main topic of conversation, and always reason to be there, was mental health. What I really then realised was in any one way, most of the players you played with have been one way or another affected And it's particularly after that playing days, that loss of identity, that lack of support from having been successful in playing days, heroes with the World Cup, so then not necessarily having any mental health support in life. Is that something that you feel pretty strong with that?
I mean, I do. My journey through life from the age of, as a child, like not sleeping, baby not sleeping, as a kid not being able to go to school, just fingernails, scrapes on the door handle, on the door frames, on just anxiety, panic, all these kind of things has meant that it's been my entire thing. It's never really been rugby did this. It was almost lived through rugby as well. What I mean by that is that brain injury, I don't know anything about. It's a really tricky one. Yeah, it's a physical sort of interruption or whatever it is that can create whatever. I get that. I'm sort of, and the identity thing, I translate it all back to this thing. It's almost like there's two of these energy states. One is everything's a problem, and that's survival, because you've got to survive those problems. Or anything's possible, and that's a create state. That's where you create your world. And I think this shifting between those two energy states is kind of it. I was the same with identity, is that when you live in a certain identity, the structure of beliefs of that creates a kind of, if you like, that's what I would describe as an energy state. Now, if you can't change that energy state, you go from being in an environment where the energy state fits, and you come out of that, and now you're like a plug that can't find a socket anywhere else. And I'm not saying this for any of my teammates at all. It's just my experience. And people will always be able to say, oh, it's okay for you because of that, of course. But the thing that I've always done, which has been difficult, is that when I'm in a certain energy state, survival one, my thoughts will come up that are survivalist. What if this happens? What if that? What if that? So you kind of, whenever I have those thoughts, I used to answer them, thinking that if I answer these survival thoughts, these fearful thoughts, it'll create a beautiful state of energy over here, but it doesn't. It's like feeding a stray cat. I've done that before in Mallorca. We had a stray cat, and it was just there, and we fed it. We're like, oh yeah, but it looks like this, and we fed it. We had it for 10 years, and it's beautiful, but it comes back, and it also gets hungrier. It ended up being on our sofa most nights, and it's beautiful. But you realize what you're doing is, once you start that thing of being like, here's a what if thought. So I'm walking around the change room telling the guys before a game, if their winger does that, you've got to be there. Will you be there? And I'm, what if he kicks it? What if the fullback does a chip over the top and no one's there? And I'm like, well, hold on. And you're like, and what I'm doing is I'm solidifying that energy state. I'm validating it with each time I answer that thought. So my understanding of mental health now, a little bit through my healing journey, is that energy state, if I want different thoughts, I've got to shift the energy. Answering the thoughts doesn't shift the energy necessarily. It gives you a temporary relief that brings the cat back looking for more reassurance.
You've created a habit as well.
Exactly. And so shifting the energy without going through the level of thoughts is really interesting, but that's where all these techniques come in about the opening, the mindfulness, the facing vulnerability, and basically when you feel survival instincts, you have to work to do the opposite. When your breathing speeds up, when you speed up your walk, when you tense your shoulders, you do the opposite in a conscious way to show yourself that actually this isn't that situation. I'm going to at least ask, are these thoughts true? I know, if my car's been stolen, then it doesn't matter how much I shift my energy, I've got to deal with the fact my car's been stolen. It's a real thing. But when you can have this thought about, what if their winger does that? And then you go for, like I said, with the kicker, you turn up, what if this ball misses here? And by the end of the warm-up, you're like, what about what you were saying before? It's like, that's right. And that's my work with the mental health. But it's so difficult because, like you said, the habit is to chase the threat. And I've done that my entire life, and it's ruined me. And I still do. I still get caught, but I've got into periods of anxiety and panic and not sleeping. But the answer has never been to realize, if I want to get to create state, I have to settle into this vulnerability. And sometimes it means relaxing into a space which feels like anything but relaxation, but that's courage. People are showing courage everywhere. And when you do that, you take this contracted sort of energy of survival and you expand it. You take the darkness of survival and you bring light. When people do that, they become transformers in our world. So people going through mental health who are able to take solid and make it expansive and connected and open, closed to open, and dark to light, they're the people we need. We don't, the people that come and who are mostly light, that's great. But if you want to create a society where we can transform and evolve, we need people consciously doing that. So people facing the struggle, they're on the pitch playing, and they're there to be supported. And it seems there's lots of, as you mentioned before, there's people in certain generations which seem to be facing things. But the question for me is, how can we work to help explore that energy shift to see what's really possible, rather than sort of come in with these straightforward, I don't know, sometimes reactive, which is what my thing was doing. Here's a problem, oh my gosh, let's sort this, and then suddenly you've got more problems down the line. Just having that time to come together, open, all do our own work and see what the result of that is.
One common denominator through this conversation and what I feel like it's been in your life is this, even when you've tried to bend your rails and so on, looking at you now, you're in fabulous shape, keep fit. You had to keep fit as a player because it's part of the physical side of the game and it was really important to you. But there's a discipline that still made you do that. I'm interested to know how that relates to your sort of mindset, your mental health, if you like, and the fact that you aren't training necessarily for the next game, the next World Cup, which was a part of your life previously. So where did you manage to keep that? Because there's things you've changed, there's a maturity about how you thought about things and mindset to where you are now. How have you managed to sort of maintain that discipline on physical exercise, if you like?
I definitely agree. I think discipline, wherever you can learn it, it becomes of huge value, and it's really powerful. And it's disciplines about that. How do I want to turn up? Yeah, that's right up to the line perfectly, but it doesn't tip over the line into this is how things should be. The discipline is just, I look after me. And I think
that's a controllable as well. You can go to the gym, you can work your run, so that.
And I think the discipline side is really important to give things guidance, definitely. And I think for me personally, I there's areas that I struggle in, definitely. And there's things where I don't perhaps have the passion and the immediate joy, or it doesn't resonate, and there's things that I need to do that maybe it takes me a while to get around to, for sure. And that's my work in terms of establishing boundaries and the drive, just as it's my work to also come back. So there's always that push, the discipline of, whatever it is. In terms of, but it's hugely, hugely helpful, no doubt. And I think that's what I was going to say about the parenting side, is that that's the difficult thing. It's like that discipline is an incredible asset. And so there's that kind of, let you just be you. But there's also but it's another one. And this is, I think, a constant challenge for society. We want everyone to just feel free and be themselves, but there's also a need for discipline and what have you.
Well, there's values there, isn't there? So you got certain pillars. Yes, I can imagine that's where you probably excel as a dad, as a parent, is like, yes, have certain amount of freedom, but there's manners, there's certain things that are important.
But I'm on a healing journey, so I can be sometimes less inclined to go down the discipline route, because I've lived so damn disciplined in terms of in certain fields, and I've felt the pain of that kind of maybe just because I've tipped over the line in other ways, I've associated that with discipline. But the beauty of the discipline being that the World Cup in 2003, the ball hits you in the hands and you just hit a kick, and you hit it and you, why the hell am I hitting this kick at the end of extra time in a World Cup final with this foot from here? And you look back, and I've hit 100,000 of those easy on the way in, easy. And the number of times I've turned up at a rugby stadium with a bag of balls on my back, not saying that I wasn't present whilst I was driving, but I've turned up and been like, I didn't even know I chose to be here. And it could be habit, but it's also deeper in terms of just like, this is what I'm here to do. And sometimes that is so powerful. You realize that discipline and where you feel it and you can go there, and if you can get there, it's also going to reveal things. It's part of that, why you're here. I think for me, yeah, discipline huge in terms of why do I stay in shape? Because my passion is to explore mastery, and I get most of my revelations through sport. Sport's one of those that feeds you back immediately. You shoot a ball at a basketball hoop, you know immediately where it is. Sometimes in business, you make a decision, you never find out whether it was what it was about. And even if you do, you don't even know what was down to you and what was not. That can be really challenging too. But when you go to basketball, you shoot a ball, you see where it lands. And this constant feedback for me, and same with playing tennis or kicking rugby balls or whatever, it's just, I'm literally just using that to say, right, here's the energy of what I want to happen. I have to match that on the inside. And when you do, it just happens. And it's like this mastery thing. Instead of like, oh, your hand must go here, everything comes out of that energy. The intelligence of, you create the energy inside, the vision of it, your body will do what it needs to do, if that's your thing. Yeah, like you could tell me about another sport that I have no idea about, and I'd be like, I need to do some work before I get there, or I may never get there. But for the sports I go to, it makes sense to me. And I suddenly start feeling like I come alive. So I stay in shape to do that. My body forms around what it is I want to do. And I want to be able to do it for as long as I can.
Yeah, I can tell. But going back to the discipline.
Yeah.
I'm conscious of time and something to kind of almost wrap up, but purpose. It feels like you're still searching for that. Any one time your purpose could have been to win the World Cup, to win the competition, to beat the next team you're playing. But an undertow of a bigger purpose of what you'd really like to achieve. And I don't look, it's a destination, which is something that you're trying to achieve right now. But sitting here right now in May 2025, what would you say is your purpose, and what have you not achieved yet that you really want to?
I have a business which has been going since 2017 called One Living, which sells, it's a health and wellbeing brand. We operate in the drink space. That's again come out of my energy and desire. Right now I know what my purpose is, because it's what I spend all my time trying to do, having these conversations. You leave me long enough with someone, if you sort of introduce me to your dog, leave me for 2 minutes, I'll be talking to the dog about unfolding potential, and that's what I do. And I find it everywhere. And sometimes I get intuitive things about, yes, doing this, I do kicking coaching, this is where I find it. I know that's what right now I feel is my purpose, is to do that. How it fits into society is a different thing. I keep thinking, oh, maybe I should try and make a living out of this, because it would probably help me, because I spend 90% of my time doing it, and I never get, not that I want to get paid for it, but I sort of just, I just don't want to really get paid to do it. I can't get paid to do it. I just don't. And so then I have a business which works deep into the health space. I mean, properly really going for it with the products that we do. Just really, this is everything in there. And I know that's where the business side is for me, but it's still purely out of my passion. That's all I talk about with people. You start me on any topic and it'll end up here. Because I think that's part of what I feel during my rugby career, that stepping over the line and the suffering that it caused, but also as a kid, that desire to be perfect and stepping over the line and closing off, and the suffering that caused means that what I'm after now is perhaps in that healing space is connection, because I disconnected. I want to connect. I want to open up. I want to explore. I don't want to control. I want to explore. I want to connect. I don't want to disconnect. I want to feel. I don't want to see. So I'm not doing stuff that people look at and go, oh my gosh, but I might be doing stuff when I kick with people where they kick next to me and they go, there's something different about this. Because I'm enjoying a relationship with the ball. It's not me trying to get this damn thing over the post. It's me and this thing going, let's see what we can get. And I'm trying to bring that opportunity as a pull to this amazing push that so many people are bringing with such amazing gift. And I everywhere I go, that's what I find. But it used to be about how does it fit into society? What do I look like? How do I distinguish myself? But I'm just happy away doing this and turning up where it feels right to be. And I just like I said, turn up, bring me, look after me, give everything the best chance. And in that space, often there is a connection, and it's often to magic, I think, instead of that, the predictable, or even the desired, is so much less than the magic.
But that's super relatable to this conversation. But, you know, I made it very clear to you how keen I was to talk with you. You chose to come here, which I thank you for. And in some way, this is therapy for me. I've learned the articulation. I will watch this back, because there's a moment I'm fully present, but also there's things going here. But there's so many things you said that I can learn from, and anyone watching and listening to can as well. So thank you.
No, my pleasure. I get a chance to come and to be me, connect, and it just, yeah, it's just such a different feeling to walking away going, how did I do? It's like, it doesn't matter. I just was.
Well, you've made me super happy. So I really appreciate it,
I thank
Johnny.
you.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Top man.